This morning on Today's Health, brain tumors. According to the American Brain Tumor Association, there are more than 350,000 Americans living with brain tumors. Because symptoms are often vague and confusing, though, brain tumors can be difficult to diagnose. In fact, for one Colorado woman, it was her own gut feeling, which may have saved her life.
The ball shall weigh no less than 5 nor more than 5.5 ounces and measure no less than 9 or more than 9 1/4 inches in circumference.
As the wife of professional baseball pitcher Mark Holzemer, 35-year-old Liz Holzemer was familiar with this rule of the game. Yet she couldn't believe the irony as the doctor showed her the MRI film of her own brain. Right there, compressing her thalamus and brainstem, was a tumor the size of a baseball.
When he said brain tumor, I just went completely numb. My heart just dropped. I don't remember breathing.
4 years ago, Liz and Mark decided to start a family. When Liz went off her birth control pills, her doctor told her to expect irregular periods. But after 6 months without a cycle, she felt something was wrong. And then Liz began to have what she calls little spells.
I was having weekly migraine headaches. I would experience, the best way I could describe was swishing in my right ear, and it literally sounded like my head was stuck in a washing machine, or it sounded like waves crashing on a beach.
One doctor suggested Liz might have a non-cancerous pituitary tumor that could be overcome by taking hormone injections as part of a fertility regimen.
At that point, I urged him, I said, well, if you think I have a tumor, don't you think we should roll this out? Doctors agreed and scheduled an MRI. The day after the test, Liz awoke to a life-altering phone call. I just remember him telling me, well, you don't have a pituitary tumor. And I was just ready to breathe a sigh of relief. And he said, you have something more serious. You have a meningioma.
This is the right side of her brainstem.
Meningiomas are tumors that originate from the meninges, which are membrane-like structures that surround the brain and spinal cord. They represent 1 in 5 of all brain tumors. The little spells Liz was having were actually partial seizures. The tumor was also most likely responsible for her fertility problems. Although hers was benign, Liz soon learned how devastating a meningioma can be if left undetected.
They go to sleep at night and go to bed, and their spouse or family member can't wake them up the next morning, and they're in a coma.
When you hear someone having a brain tumor, it's when they're elderly or they discover it after an autopsy is performed. I never in a million years thought someone my age could be diagnosed with such a devastating illness.
Just 8 days after her diagnosis, Liz underwent 7 hours of surgery to remove the tumor that had invaded her brain and her life. Before being wheeled into the operating room, Liz and Mark had one last talk.
He kissed me and said, I promise you the next time you're in a hospital, it will be to give birth to our son or daughter.
The surgery was a success, and a few months later, Liz's body got back to normal.
I was calling my girlfriend saying, you won't believe this. I have headaches, I have cramps, I'm so excited. And of course I thought I was out of my mind, literally, and I was just so elated.
Hannah.
And 1 year after her surgery, she gave birth to Hannah Elizabeth.
Today, as I watch Hannah holding one of her daddy's baseballs, it just really touches my heart, because had we not been trying to have her, I wouldn't be here today. She saved my life.
Recovery was tough, but after 3 years, there's no sign of Liz's tumor returning.
I really believe that women need to trust their instincts, educate one another, and just not to be afraid to ask questions. And if we just really start to listen to what our bodies are telling us, we're our best advocates for our own health.
So nice to have a happy ending. Here to help us understand some of the symptoms of brain tumors is Dr. Linda Liao, who is a neurosurgeon at UCLA. Hi, Dr. Liao.
Hi.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Well, obviously, Liz had a great ending to her story, she and her husband and their little girl. But when you hear the word brain tumor, of course, it strikes fear in your heart. But many people, as I mentioned, are actually living with brain tumors. So quite a high percentage of these tumors are benign.
Yes, there is a large proportion of these tumors that are benign. The actual prognosis actually depends on the type of tumor. And I think it's important for people to realize that there are many different types of tumors that can occur in the brain. And there are a large proportion of patients who've had tumors successfully treated that go on to live very normal lives.
And even benign tumors, even with meningiomas, even if I guess 85% of those specific tumors are benign, if left untreated, excuse me, they can have a devastating effect. So just because they're benign doesn't mean that you can leave them alone, right?
Correct. Because they are tumors, the assumption is that they'll continue to grow, and as they grow, given the confined space in the skull that the brain occupies, they will invade or compress brain structures, and then you can develop neurologic symptoms from that, and if you allow it to grow too much, then these symptoms become permanent.
Let's talk about the symptoms, because oftentimes these brain tumors are misdiagnosed. What are the common symptoms, sort of in general terms, Dr. Liao, for all brain tumors?
For the three most common symptoms of brain tumors in general are headaches, seizures, and what's called a focal neurologic deficit, meaning a localized neurologic problem in a specific area of the body.
When you say that, can you give me some examples?
For instance, like motor weakness in one side of the body, speech difficulties, sensory changes, hearing loss, visual field loss in a particular location, which either consistently recurs in the same location or progressively gets worse over time.
What about dizziness?
Dizziness is one symptom or more specifically, a sensation of spinning is a symptom of a brain tumor in a particular area of the brain, but it's not a general symptom for all brain tumors, obviously.
So obviously it depends on the placement of the tumor, the kind of tumor,
right.
But these are things to look out for. Also, Liz mentioned the fact that not only did she have headaches, but she heard that whooshing sound, like a wave breaking sort of in her ear. Is that fairly common as well?
That can occur, but it's not one of the more common symptoms, but it is indicative of where her tumor particularly was located. In terms of the headaches, as you know, lots of people have headaches, and the majority of people with headaches do not actually have brain tumors, obviously. So there are certain characteristics of headaches that would help to distinguish a brain tumor headache from something more common like a migraine or a tension type headache.
Well, what are those characteristics?
Well, those characteristics are, for one thing, a brain tumor headache is caused by a growing mass in the skull, so it increases the intracranial pressure as the mass grows in a confined space. So brain tumor headaches tend to get worse over time, and whereas migraines tend to come and go and get better and worse. So that's one distinguishing characteristic. They also tend to be exacerbated by coughing or straining or anything that increases your intracranial pressure. And they're often associated with nausea or vomiting.
So clearly, if you have any of these symptoms, you should seek medical attention and even insist in some cases that you have a CAT scan?
Well, more appropriately, probably an MRI scan.
MRI?
Yes.
All right. Well, Dr. Linda Liao, thank you very much for coming by this morning and giving us
You're
important
welcome.
information.